Jerusalem. Spring, the season when kings go forth to war. But this year the king of Israel stayed home. Evening. The king walks the roof of his palace, restless above his sleeping city. Below him, a light, a woman washing. Very beautiful to look upon. He should turn away. He does not. One glance. That is all it will take to break a kingdom. Before this story ends, a prophet will point his finger at the throne. A king will flee his own city, barefoot and weeping. And an army will march against him, raised by his own son. To understand this night, we must go back 7 years. Back to a runner stumbling out of a lost battle, with a crown in his hand. This is 2 Samuel, the whole book. David's kingdom, its glory, its sin, and the price he paid. The runner came from Mount Gilboa, clothes rent, earth upon his head. He fell at David's feet in Ziklag. The people have fled from the battle, he said. Saul and Jonathan his son are dead also. Saul, the king who had hunted David for years. And Jonathan, the friend who had given away his robe, his bow, and his claim to the throne. The young messenger held out a crown and a bracelet, and claimed he had killed the wounded king himself at Saul's own request. He expected a reward. David's answer was not what he expected. How wast thou not afraid to stretch forth thine hand to destroy the Lord's anointed? The man died for the king he claimed to have slain. Then David tore his clothes and mourned and fasted until evening, for Saul and for Jonathan and for the house of Israel. And he sang a lament that Israel never forgot. The beauty of Israel is slain upon thy high places. How are the mighty fallen? I am distressed for thee, my brother Jonathan. Thy love to me was wonderful, passing the love of women. The shepherd wept for the prince. Then David inquired of the Lord, Shall I go up into any of the cities of Judah? And the Lord said, Unto Hebron. And there the men of Judah came, and anointed David king over the house of Judah. 1 tribe, not 12. For in the north Abner, captain of Saul's host, took Ishbosheth, Saul's surviving son, and made him king over all Israel. Judah had crowned David, the north had crowned another man. And between the two thrones stood two generals who hated each other. Israel's war with the Philistines was over. Israel's war with itself was about to begin. At the pool of Gibeon, the armies met. 12 young men from each side grappled and fell together, and the field became a slaughter. Asahel, brother of Joab, swift of foot as a wild roe, chased Abner from the field. Turn thee aside, Abner warned him. He would not, and Abner drove the butt of his spear through him. Joab buried his brother in Bethlehem, and he did not forget. The war was long between the house of Saul and the house of David, but David waxed stronger and stronger, and the house of Saul weaker and weaker. Then Abner quarreled with his puppet king over Rizpah, a concubine of Saul, and swore to hand all Israel to David. He came to Hebron with 20 men, and David made him a feast. And Abner went out in peace. But Joab called him back quietly to the gate, and smote him under the 5th rib, for the blood of Asahel his brother. Peace murdered in a doorway. David cried out that he and his kingdom were guiltless of Abner's blood forever. He walked behind the bier himself, weeping. A prince and a great man is fallen this day in Israel. And all Israel understood that day that the killing was not of the king. Soon after, 2 captains crept into Ishbosheth's house at noon, and slew him on his own bed, and brought his head to David, expecting joy. They received the judgment of the Amalekite. Now nothing stood between David and the throne of all Israel, and he had not lifted a finger to clear his path. Other men's daggers had done it, and he had condemned every one. Then came all the tribes of Israel to Hebron. "Behold," they said, "we are thy bone and thy flesh." And they anointed David king over Israel. He was 30 years old. The shepherd boy of Bethlehem, anointed in secret by old Samuel, hunted through the wilderness, twice a fugitive, now wore the crown of a united nation. His first act was to take a city. Jerusalem, a Jebusite fortress on a hill never conquered, so sure of its walls that its defenders mocked. "Even the blind and the lame shall keep thee out." David's men went up through the water shaft, and the fortress fell. He called it the City of David. History would call it the Holy City. Hiram, king of Tyre, sent cedar trees and carpenters and masons. They built David a house. And David perceived that the Lord had established him king over Israel, for his people Israel's sake. The Philistines heard and came up to swallow the new king. At Baal-perazim David broke them. "The Lord hath broken forth upon mine enemies as the breach of waters." They came again. This time God said, "Wait. When thou hearest the sound of a going in the tops of the mulberry trees, then shall the Lord go out before thee." And Israel smote them from Geba unto Gazer. Now the kingdom lacked one thing: the ark of God, the golden throne of the Lord's presence, still waited in a house on a hill, where it had rested since the days of Samuel. David gathered 30,000 chosen men and set the ark upon a new cart, and brought it out with harps and timbrels and cymbals, all Israel playing before the Lord. Then, at the threshing floor of Nachon, the oxen stumbled. A man named Uzzah reached out his hand and took hold of the ark to steady it, and God smote him there for his error, and he died by the ark of God. The music stopped. David was angry. Then David was afraid. "How shall the ark of the Lord come to me?" He left it in the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite, and went home without it. 3 months passed, and word came that the Lord had blessed the house of Obed-Edom and all that he had, because of the ark. Holiness was not a danger to be managed. It was a presence to be honored. So David went again, not with a cart this time, but with bearers, as the law required. Every 6 paces a sacrifice. And David danced before the Lord with all his might, girded in a linen ephod, the king of Israel, leaping and whirling like a man with nothing left to prove. So the ark of the Lord came into the city of David, with shouting and with the sound of the trumpet. But from a palace window, one pair of eyes watched without joy. Michal, daughter of Saul, David's first wife, and she despised him in her heart. "How glorious was the king of Israel today," she said, "who uncovered himself in the eyes of the handmaids of his servants." "It was before the Lord," David answered, "which chose me before thy father. Therefore will I play before the Lord, and I will yet be more vile than thus." And Michal had no child unto the day of her death. The king now dwelt in a house of cedar, and the Lord had given him rest from his enemies, and it troubled him. "I dwell in an house of cedar, but the ark of God dwelleth within curtains." He would build God a temple. But that night the word of the Lord came to Nathan the prophet, with an answer no one expected. "Shalt thou build me an house? I took thee from the sheepcote, from following the sheep, to be ruler over my people. Thou shalt not build me a house. I will build thee one. And when thy days be fulfilled, I will set up thy seed after thee. He shall build an house for my name, and thine house and thy kingdom shall be established forever. A throne forever." Israel would remember this promise through every exile and every ruin. and hang upon it the hope of a coming king. And David went in and sat before the Lord and said, Who am I, O Lord God, that thou hast brought me hitherto? The years that followed were years of iron, Philistines, Moab, Zobah, Syria, Edom. Whithersoever David went, the Lord preserved him, and the kingdom stretched from the river of Egypt toward the Euphrates. But in the middle of the conquests, the king stopped to ask a strange question. Is there yet any that is left of the house of Saul, that I may show him kindness, for Jonathan's sake? There was one, Mephibosheth, Jonathan's son, lame on both his feet since the day the news came from Gilboa, and his nurse fled, and he fell. Kings destroyed rival bloodlines. David set this one at his own table. Thou shalt eat bread at my table continually. The covenant of the two friends had outlived them both. Then the king of Ammon died, and David sent comforters to his son. The young king listened to his princes instead, and shaved off half the beards of David's servants, and cut off their garments, and sent them home in shame. It was a small insult. It brought a great war. Ammon hired 33,000 Syrian mercenaries, and Joab found himself fighting before and behind. Be of good courage, Joab told his brother, and let us play the men for our people, and for the cities of our God. Israel prevailed. The Syrians made peace. Only Ammon remained behind the walls of Rabbah. David had never lost a battle. His next defeat would come without a single sword drawn, on a quiet evening, on his own roof. In the spring, at the time when kings go forth to battle, David sent Joab and all Israel against Rabbah. But David tarried still at Jerusalem. You know this evening already. The palace roof, the restless king, the woman in the lamplight below. David sent and inquired after her. Her name was Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah the Hittite, one of David's own mighty men, at that hour fighting David's war before the walls of Rabbah. And David sent messengers and took her. The shepherd who once refused to touch the Lord's anointed now took what was not his, because he could. Weeks later, a message came to the palace. 3 words that changed everything. I am with child. The cover-up began at once. David summoned Uriah home from the front. Go down to thy house, so the child might pass as his own. But Uriah slept at the palace door with the servants. The ark and Israel and Judah abide in tents. My lord Joab is encamped in the open fields. Shall I then go to mine house to eat and to drink? As thou livest, I will not do this thing. The soldier's honor shamed the king's plan. David made him drunk. Still Uriah would not go home. There was more loyalty in him drunk than in his king sober. So David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by the hand of Uriah himself. The man carried his own death warrant, sealed through the gates of Rabbah. Set ye Uriah in the forefront of the hottest battle, and retire ye from him, that he may be smitten and die. Joab obeyed. The men drew back, and Uriah the Hittite died beneath the wall, with soldiers around him who never knew why the line had thinned. When the morning was past, David fetched Bathsheba to his house, and she became his wife and bare him a son. The matter was closed. The secret was buried with Uriah. The book gives it one line, but the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. Months passed. A child was born in the palace, and one day the prophet Nathan walked into the throne room with a story about a lamb. There were 2 men in one city, one rich, one poor. The rich man had flocks and herds, exceeding many. The poor man had nothing, save one little ewe lamb which grew up with his children. It ate of his meat, drank of his cup, lay in his bosom. It was unto him as a daughter. And there came a traveller unto the rich man, and he spared to take of his own flock, but took the poor man's lamb and dressed it for the man that was come to him. David's anger was kindled greatly. As the Lord liveth, the man that hath done this thing shall surely die. Because he did this thing, and because he had no pity. The room went still. Nathan lifted his eyes to the king. Thou art the man. I anointed thee king. I delivered thee out of the hand of Saul. I gave thee thine master's house. And if that had been too little, I would moreover have given unto thee such and such things. Wherefore hast thou despised the commandment of the Lord? Thou hast killed Uriah the Hittite with the sword of the children of Ammon. Now therefore the sword shall never depart from thine house. The man who had judged the story was the man in the story. And David did not call his guards. He said 5 words that saved his soul. I have sinned against the Lord. And Nathan said, The Lord also hath put away thy sin. Thou shalt not die. Howbeit, the child that is born unto thee shall surely die. Grace and consequence in one breath. Forgiveness would not stop the harvest of what the king had sown. The child fell sick. David fasted and lay all night upon the earth, and would not rise. 7 days. On the 7th day, the child died. His servants feared to tell him, but David saw them whispering and understood. Is the child dead? He is dead. Then David arose from the earth and washed and anointed himself and came into the house of the Lord and worshipped. While the child was yet alive, I fasted and wept. But now he is dead, wherefore should I fast? I shall go to him, but he shall not return to me. And David comforted Bathsheba his wife. She bare another son, and called his name Solomon. And the Lord loved him. At Rabbah the war ended. The crown of the king of Ammon was set on David's head. The kingdom stood taller than ever, and under its floors the sword Nathan promised had already begun to move. The sword rose first inside the palace walls. Amnon, David's firstborn, burned with desire for his half-sister Tamar, and a cunning cousin gave him a plan. He feigned sickness and asked the king to send Tamar to bake bread in his sight. Alone with her, he seized her. She pleaded with him. He would not hearken unto her voice. Nay, my brother, she begged, do not thou this folly. Whither shall I cause my shame to go? He was stronger than she. Then the desire turned to hatred, greater hatred than the desire had been. Arise, be gone. He threw her out and bolted the door behind her. Tamar rent her robe of divers colors and laid ashes on her head and went away crying. She dwelt desolate in her brother Absalom's house. Absalom took her in and quieted her. And from that day he began to keep an account his father refused to open. And when King David heard of all these things, he was very wroth, and he did nothing. Amnon was his firstborn, and the king who could judge a nation could not judge his own. The king was furious, but he punished no one. And in the silence of a father who would not judge, something far darker was growing. Absalom spake unto his brother Amnon neither good nor bad. For 2 full years, nothing, only a hatred waiting. Then Absalom held a sheep-shearing feast and asked for all the king's sons. When Amnon's heart was merry with wine, Absalom's servants struck, and Amnon died at his brother's table. The rest of the princes fled on their mules. The first report said Absalom had slain them all. The king tore his garments and lay on the earth, until the truth came, Amnon only. Absalom fled to his grandfather, the king of Geshur. 3 years he stayed, and the soul of King David longed to go forth unto Absalom, yet the king would not send. Jerusalem whispered, The king mourned for Amnon day by day, and Geshur sheltered his murderer, a house divided by an unburied grief. It took Joab and a wise woman of Tekoa with a parable of 2 sons to pry the door open. The king doth speak this thing as one which is faulty, for the king doth not fetch home again his banished. So Absalom returned to Jerusalem, but the king said, Let him not see my face. 2 more years in the same city, father and son, without a word. Absalom, praised in all Israel for his beauty, his thick, heavy hair, his crown, grew tired of waiting. He set Joab's barley field on fire to get an audience, and at last the king kissed his son. A kiss without a conversation. Reconciliation without repentance, restoration without truth. It healed nothing, it armed everything. Then Absalom prepared him chariots and horses, and 50 men to run before him. And he rose up early, and stood beside the way of the gate. To every man with a cause for the king he said, See, thy matters are good and right, but there is no man deputed of the king to hear thee. Oh, that I were made judge in the land. And when any man bowed to him, he put forth his hand, and took him, and kissed him. So Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. 4 years of smiles at the gate, then a word to the king, Let me go to Hebron, and pay my vow. Hebron, where his father had first been crowned. From Hebron, the trumpet sounded through all the tribes. Absalom reigneth in Hebron. The conspiracy was strong. The people increased continually. And Ahithophel, David's wisest counselor, was among them. A messenger reached the palace. The hearts of the men of Israel are after Absalom. And David, the man who took Jerusalem, who never lost a field, said, Arise and let us flee. Why run? Because staying meant a siege and a bloodbath in the holy city against his own son. The king walked out of his capital to spare it, and all the country wept with a loud voice as the king crossed the brook Kidron, barefoot, his head covered, weeping as he went up the ascent of Mount Olivet. Ittai the Gittite, a foreigner with 600 men, refused to leave him. As the Lord liveth, in what place my lord the king shall be, whether in death or life, even there also will thy servant be. The priests brought the ark of God out after him, and David sent it back. If I shall find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me again. But if he say, I have no delight in thee, behold, here am I. Let him do to me as seemeth good unto him. No grasping at the symbol of God this time. Israel had tried that once, and lost the ark to the Philistines. The king would not use heaven as a shield. He surrendered to it instead. Then came word that cut deepest. Ahithophel is among the conspirators. David prayed one short prayer. O Lord, I pray thee, turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness. And at the top of the mount, the answer was already waiting. Hushai the Archite come to meet him. Return to the city, David told his friend, and say unto Absalom, I will be thy servant. Then mayest thou for me defeat the counsel of Ahithophel. A spy, planted in a single sentence. Down the far slope, a man of the house of Saul named Shimei came forth, cursing and casting stones at the fallen king. Come out, thou bloody man. Abishai wanted his head. David refused. Behold, my son seeketh my life. How much more may this Benjamite do it? Let him curse. It may be that the Lord will look on mine affliction, and requite me good for his cursing this day. In Jerusalem, Ahithophel gave Absalom his first counsel, and it was abomination made strategy. Take thy father's concubines on the roof in the sight of all Israel. Let the breach be made unhealable. On the very roof where David had once looked down at Bathsheba, Nathan's prophecy came true in the sight of the sun. Then Ahithophel asked for 12,000 men. "I will arise and pursue after David this night. He is weary and weak-handed. I will smite the king only, and all the people shall be at peace." The plan was flawless. Every soldier in the room knew it. That night, the life of the king hung on a single question: whose counsel would Absalom take? Then Hushai spoke and painted fear in glorious colors. "Thy father is a man of war. He is hid now in some pit. Thou knowest him, a bear robbed of her whelps in the field. Wait for all Israel," he said. "Lead the host thyself." And Absalom said, "The counsel of Hushai the Archite is better than the counsel of Ahithophel." For the Lord had appointed to defeat the good counsel of Ahithophel, that the Lord might bring evil upon Absalom. Ahithophel saw it whole. He saddled his ass, went home to his city, put his household in order, and hanged himself. The wisest man in Israel could count every outcome except mercy. Warned by runners in the night, David crossed the Jordan by morning light and gathered his veterans at Mahanaim. The old lions of Ziklag in Adullam formed their lines around the king one more time. David numbered the people and set captains: Joab, Abishai, Ittai. He would go out himself. "Thou shalt not," said the men, "thou art worth 10,000 of us." So the king stood by the gate as the army marched out by hundreds and by thousands. And all the people heard the one command he gave his captains: "Deal gently for my sake with the young man, even with Absalom." The battle was joined in the wood of Ephraim, and the servants of David slew 20,000 men that day. The wood devoured more people than the sword. And Absalom rode upon a mule, and the mule went under the thick boughs of a great oak, and his head caught hold of the oak, and he was taken up between the heaven and the earth. The prince who had everything, the beauty, the hair, the stolen hearts, hung by that glory in a tree, while his mule went from under him. A soldier found him and would not touch him. The king charged thee, "Beware that none touch the young man Absalom." Joab had no such scruples. "I may not tarry thus with thee," he said, and he took 3 darts in his hand and thrust them through the heart of Absalom while he was yet alive in the midst of the oak. They cast him into a great pit in the wood and laid a very great heap of stones upon him. The pillar he had raised for his own name stood empty in the king's dale. Then 2 runners raced toward Mahanaim with the news: Ahimaaz the swift and Cushi the messenger. And David sat between the 2 gates, waiting. A watchman called, a runner, then another. "He is a good man," said the king of the first, "and cometh with good tidings." Good tidings. He meant only one thing by it. "All is well," Ahimaaz cried and bowed. "Blessed be the Lord thy God, which hath delivered up the men that lifted their hand against my lord the king." And the king asked the only question he had: "Is the young man Absalom safe?" Ahimaaz swerved from the truth. Then Cushi came, and the king asked again, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" "The enemies of my lord the king," said Cushi, "be as that young man is." And the king was much moved, and went up to the chamber over the gate and wept. And as he went, thus he said, "O my son Absalom, my son Absalom, would God I had died for thee. O Absalom, my son, my son." The victory turned into mourning that day. The army crept back into the city ashamed, as men steal away when they flee in battle. Above the gate, the sound would not stop. It was Joab, blunt, bloody, indispensable Joab, who broke it. "Thou hast shamed this day the faces of all thy servants, which this day have saved thy life. Thou lovest thine enemies and hatest thy friends. Arise, go forth, and speak comfortably unto thy servants, or worse will befall thee than all thy youth until now. And the king arose and sat in the gate, and the people came before him. A father buried his grief where kings must bury it, behind his face, and went back to being Israel. The road home was thick with reckonings. Shimei, begging pardon at the Jordan, spared again. Mephibosheth, unwashed since the day the king left. Old Barzillai, who had fed the exiles, refusing every reward. Let thy servant turn back again, that I may die in mine own city. But the seams of the kingdom had been torn, and a worthless man named Sheba blew a trumpet in the tearing. We have no part in David. Every man to his tents, O Israel. Joab pursued, pausing only to murder his own replacement, Amasa, with a kiss and a hidden sword. The general David could neither tame nor spare. At the city of Abel, a wise woman called from the wall and traded one rebel's head for a city's life. The trumpet sounded retreat. The kingdom held by a thread of one woman's sense. Then came 3 years of famine, and an old blood guilt surfaced. Saul had slaughtered the Gibeonites, whom Israel had sworn to spare. 7 of his house were given up to die on a hill, and Rizpah, mother of 2 of them, spread sackcloth upon the rock, from harvest until the rain fell. Day and night she kept the birds and beasts from the bodies of her sons. One grieving woman on a rock, month after month, until her vigil reached the king. David gathered the bones, hers, and at last Saul's and Jonathan's from Jabesh Gilead, and buried them with honor. And after that, God was entreated for the land. David had survived a spear, a rebellion, and a trumpet of revolt. So why would a census, a simple counting of soldiers, call down the deadliest judgment his kingdom had ever seen? In his latter years, David wrote his deliverance into a song. The Lord is my rock and my fortress, my shield and the horn of my salvation. He sent from above, he took me. He drew me out of many waters. The record closes with the roll of the mighty men. Eleazar, whose hand clave to his sword. The 3 who broke through a garrison to bring their king water from the well of Bethlehem. And David poured it out unto the Lord. Some gifts cost too much to drink. Also, among the 37 names, near the end, stands one the story cannot forget. Uriah the Hittite. Then, at the end of the book, the king fell one last time. Quietly, without a Bathsheba, without a rebel son. Go, he commanded Joab, number Israel and Judah. A census of fighting men. Trust shifting its weight. From the God who had delivered to the numbers that could be counted. Even Joab protested. The king's word prevailed. 9 months and 20 days the counting took. 800,000 swords in Israel, 500,000 in Judah. And David's heart smote him before any prophet spoke. I have sinned greatly in that I have done. The prophet Gad brought him 3 doors, 7 years of famine, 3 months fleeing before his enemies, or 3 days of pestilence. I am in a great strait, David said. Let us fall now into the hand of the Lord, for his mercies are great. Let me not fall into the hand of man. And the pestilence went through the land, from the morning even to the time appointed. From Dan to Beersheba, 70,000 men died. And when the angel stretched out his hand upon Jerusalem to destroy it, the Lord repented him of the evil, and said to the angel, It is enough. Stay now thine hand. And the hand of the angel stopped. Over the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite, a flat rock on a hill above the city, where a farmer beat out his wheat. David saw the angel and cried, "Lo, I have sinned. But these sheep, what have they done? Let thine hand, I pray thee, be against me, and against my father's house." The shepherd to the last. Gad brought the answer, "Build an altar on that floor." Araunah offered it all for nothing, the floor, the oxen, the wood. And David refused the gift with the sentence that crowns the book. "Neither will I offer burnt offerings unto the Lord my God of that which doth cost me nothing." So David bought the threshing floor and built there an altar, and the plague was stayed from Israel. And on that same rock, 1 generation later, his son Solomon would raise the temple of the Lord. The floor where judgment stopped became the place where heaven met earth. Out of the king's worst failure, God built his own house. So ends 2 Samuel. A crown carried out of a lost battle, a city taken, an ark brought home, a promise of a throne forever, and a man after God's own heart who fell, as hard as a man can fall, and never stopped turning back. The glory was real, the sin was real, the price was paid in full, in the coin of his own house. Yet the covenant stood, it always stood, for the kingdom was never resting on David's righteousness, but on God's promise. If this brought David's story to life for you, subscribe, because next we unfold the book of Daniel, 4 kings, 1 empire, and the man who outlasted them all. The whole Bible, book by book, unfolded